Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Salutations upon the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are indeed privileged to have one of the most formidable and principled people, not only in our country, but globally in our midst. Dr. Grace Naledi Pandor. Minister Pandor was appointed as the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation in 2019. Prior to this, she served as the Minister of Higher Education and Training, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Minister of Education, and the Minister of Science and Technology twice. She's been a Member of Parliament since 1994, amounting to 30 years of service. Minister Pandor matriculated at Gaborone Secondary School in Botswana. She was a teacher at Ernst Bevan School in London in 1980, and years later, she served as a senior lecturer in the Academic Support Program of the University of Cape Town. Minister Pandor has a PhD from the University of Pretoria, as well as honorary doctorates from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, the University of Stellenbosch, the University of Lisbon, and the University College of Dublin, Ireland. She also holds a master's degree in education from the University of London, a master's degree in gender linguistics obtained from the University of Stellenbosch, a bachelor's degree and certificate for continuing education from the University of Botswana and Swaziland, a diploma in education from the University of London, a diploma in higher education, administration and leadership from Bryn Mawr Summer Program, and a diploma in leadership and development from the Kennedy School Government, Harvard University. Minister Pandor became a Member of Parliament in 1994 and has amassed impressive experience in positions of public office, including Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC in the National Assembly, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces in 1998, and its chairperson from 1999 to 2004. With all of this, Minister Pandor is married to Sharif Pandor, and together they have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, let us take a moment to acknowledge the inspiring Dr. Naledi Pandor, a beacon of inspiration, not only in South Africa, but globally. She stands as a testament to unwavering conviction. Beyond being a female pioneer, Dr. Pandor's steadfast commitment to advocating for the freedom of Palestine, as well as the oppressed all over the world, resonates as a symbol of courage and resilience. We take pride in her contributions, recognizing the impact she has on both our nation and the world. Dr. Pandor has been the prime advocate of taking the Zionist regime of Israel to the International Court of Justice, and for that, all freedom-loving people will forever be indebted to her. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Naledi Pandor.
Takbir! 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 Allahu Akbar walillahi alhamd, Dr. Naledi Pandor.
Shukran for that wonderful introduction. I feel so embarrassed. Thank you very, very much. I wish to begin by greeting everybody this evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I'm so pleased, before I do the formalities, to just recognize Auntie Farida Umar. So lovely to have you here, Auntie Farida, and my old friend Salimani. I haven't seen Hajj Salimani since we were all on Hajj together many years ago, and we were in that tent at Arafat, praying so much, and you were crying so much. Alhamdulillah, we see you today. Allow me to formally begin then by thanking the leadership of the mosque for inviting me to be here. Thank you very much, Imam. And also the executive committee for allowing me to be here. As I stand here, I speak for all women in the Ummah, because women must have a voice. I wish to thank everyone for inviting me to speak to you this evening about this important case that South Africa has taken to the International Court of Justice. But before I make my remarks, because everyone is here and the media is here, let me make it clear, I have no ambition to be a president. I'm a public servant, and all I want to do is serve the people. So even though I'm a little older now, if you will have me, I will always be there, inshallah, to serve the people. It is indeed an honor for me to be here to brief you on the work that our government of South Africa has been doing in solidarity with the people of Gaza and all of Palestine. Before I get into the substance of my address, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for the support that the communities of Cape Town in particular, but also of broader South Africa, and indeed almost all humanity, have shown for the positions that we have taken in order to attempt to save the lives of children, men, and women in Palestine, and in particular in Gaza. I need to stress that the protests and mass mobilization of the people of Cape Town and other parts of South Africa have served as an inspiration to me, my Department of International Relations, as well as our government. The beautiful and inspirational murals on walls in Buurka, Salt River, Bonteheuwel, and townships across the country symbolize the solidarity of most South Africans with the people of Palestine. Much of this solidarity stems from the fact that we feel and remember our pain when we were subjected to the violence associated with apartheid and settler colonialism. As Nelson Mandela expressed, as was said by Dr. Abdullah, our history behoves us not to turn a blind eye to the oppression of others, and our freedom as South Africans is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. Given that this mosque, Al-Quds, is named after one of the Qiblas, I would like to frame our solidarity with the people of Palestine, and indeed our overall foreign policy, with references to the approaches of the Abrahamic religions to justice, equality, and fairness. We are taught that the Hadith plays an important role in helping us understand the values that underpin Islamic practice. The following Hadith may be relevant for our discussion today. Anyone who walks with a wrongdoer in order to strengthen him, knowing that all the while he is a wrongdoer, has departed from Islam. And another hadith, the Prophet, may peace be upon him, said, assist your brother and sister Muslim whether he or she be an oppressor or the oppressed. When asked, "But how shall we assist the oppressor?" the Prophet, may peace be upon him, said, "Assisting an oppressor is by forbidding and withholding that person from oppression." These are just two hadiths that suggest that Muslims cannot and should not collaborate with those who oppress others. And more importantly, that we should refrain from supporting oppressors, as this only strengthens them. These hadiths very clearly also enjoin us to support the oppressed in their struggles and engage in activities that will hold the oppressors accountable for their actions. It is thus an injunction against siding with the oppressed and also siding with the oppressor, and also to ensure that the oppressor cannot act with impunity. The same values, and it's important for me to say this, that I have referred to, of the promotion of fairness, justice, and solidarity with the oppressed, are to be found in Judaism and Christianity. The South African Jews for a Free Palestine, the SAJFP, recently circulated a statement distancing themselves from the statements of the Chief Rabbi of South Africa. The South African Jews for a Free Palestine described the statements that the Chief Rabbi made when he criticized the actions of the South African government in holding Israel to account as racist and supportive of the Israeli oppression of Palestinians. South African Jews for Palestine, for a Free Palestine, suggested that Zionism and its concomitant oppression of the Palestinians is in conflict with some of the more important values of Judaism. They stated that the progressive Jewish tradition draws on liberatory values. This includes the concept of tzedakah, which refers to the values of justice and fairness. The implication of this is that doing what is right and just is an ethical obligation in Judaism. The South African Jews for a Free Palestine statement included the following as part of their response to the Chief Rabbi and others who have been supporting the actions of the Israeli government. They indicated to be Jewish is therefore intrinsically connected to keeping our eyes open to injustice. That is our spiritual and historical duty, reiterated through the experiences of our ancestors and our teachings. Liberation theology is a major component of progressive Christian practice and has always been associated with aligning with the aspirations of oppressed peoples. Some who don't understand Islam will wonder why I quote other great religions. But we as Muslims, we respect all of the book, and it's important that we all understand this. We have seen how Christian liberation theology is active in struggles against poverty, inequality, racism, and colonialism. This point was brought home very powerfully when, in the presence of South African clergy and activists in a church in Bethlehem on Christmas Eve last year, Reverend Munta Isaac said the following: Jesus, may peace be upon him, was born among the occupied and marginalized. He is in solidarity with us in Palestine, in our pain and brokenness. Reverend Munta went on to criticize the complicity of the Western world and others in the unfolding genocide in Gaza. He said, "Let it be clear, silence is complicity. An empty calls for peace without a ceasefire and an end to occupation, and the shallow words of empathy without direct action are all under the banner of complicity." The progressive and liberatory nature of the three Abrahamic religions has found pride of place in the values and principles of the South African Constitution, as these constitutional values were shaped by the values born out of our struggle against colonialism and apartheid. These values have shaped much of our foreign policy, and they call on us to be on the side of the oppressed always. Siding with the oppressed, especially the Palestinians, has been criticized by some here in South Africa as being reckless and jeopardizing our economic interests. We say that standing on the side of justice, ending impunity, and working to stop mass killing in a genocide is very much part of our national interests. Those advocating for economic reprisals against South Africa for not being complicit with genocide are, as Reverend Mutha pointed out, perversely, actively complicit in the genocide in Gaza. These are the values and principles that inform South Africa's decision to firstly charge the leaders of Israel with individual criminal liability for the atrocities in Palestine through petitioning the International Criminal Court. We followed that first step up by taking the State of Israel to The Hague for breaches of their responsibilities under the Genocide Convention. In the context of complicity by many of the Western powers, South Africa acted to end the killing of Palestinians, particularly of children, women, and men. As of the 2nd of February, we know 27,019 Palestinians have been killed. Over 11,000 of these are children. 7,500 are women, and 1,049 are elderly Palestinian citizens. These numbers do not include those who are missing and who are under the rubble. Over 65,000 people have been injured, and close to 1.9 million are displaced. The humanitarian situation is so dire that it is feared that without an immediate ceasefire, which allows humanitarian aid to flow unhindered into Gaza, more people may likely die from starvation and disease than from the actual military assaults. We took the actions that we did at the ICC and the ICJ in an attempt to save lives, for justice, peace, and for an end to violent occupation. Our actions are in line with the most fundamental values of Islam and the religions I cited earlier, and of course, the fundamental values of South Africa's Constitution. Allow me to conclude with a brief update on the processes at the International Court of Justice. On 26 January, the International Court of Justice delivered its order on South Africa's request for the indication of provisional measures in our case to hold Israel accountable for genocidal acts in Gaza under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the crime of genocide. The provisional orders make it clear that Israel must ensure that it acts to prevent the commission of all acts under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. This is to prevent and stop A, the killing of members of the group, that is Palestinian people in this case, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to Palestinian people, and C, deliberately inflicting on Palestinian people conditions calculated to cause physical destruction in whole or in part, and D, imposing measures intended to prevent births among Palestinian people. The order is very important in our view and historic, given the acts that the Israeli army have been inflicting on the Palestinian people. The order that follows on from the injunction to adhere to the provisions of Article 2 of the Genocide Convention is extremely important. It states the following: the State of Israel shall ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit any acts described in point 1. Point 1 was, of course, the order relating to Israel having to stop the killing and other genocidal acts under Article 2 of the Convention. These two orders, if you read them together, can only mean that the judges required that Israel cease its military attacks, which were destroying people and the means necessary for them to live. It is essentially a de facto order for a ceasefire. Many have been quibbling that the court did not use ceasefire, the word. But all the orders that they gave, all the injunctions, can only be acted upon if there is a ceasefire. So clearly, a ceasefire is a corollary to the orders. And it is not Naledi Pandor who is saying this. Most honest and credible international lawyers have stressed this point. Clearly, the judges would not have made an order suggesting that you can kill people as long as you don't do it with an intention to genocide. Clearly, they weren't saying that. This is especially important given that in the judgment, the judges indicated in a lot of detail the instances of statements of genocidal intent made by Israeli leaders. In fact, they included genocidal statements made by Israeli leaders that were not even part of the application of South Africa. We were astounded at the level of research the judges had gone into in order to arrive at their decision. Another important element of the judgment was the issue of Israel's purported right to self-defense. The judgment only noted once that Israel used the notion of self-defense to justify their actions in Gaza. The court only noted this approach by Israel, but did not entertain it any further. They did not need to, as the court is well aware that the ICJ had confirmed in the Wall case of 2004 that an occupying power cannot rely on the right to self-defense as stated in Article 51 of the UN Charter. If you engage in a conflict with people that you are occupying, you are in breach of the UN Charter. The people of Gaza are still under a belligerent occupation. And whenever we speak of Palestine, don't speak of it as an ordinary conflict. This is about occupation. The people of Palestine are occupied. It's not two equal free states fighting each other. It is an occupier fighting those they have occupied and essentially slaughtering them. This is what is happening, and we need to say so. Despite its claims, these orders are binding upon Israel. It has to immediately implement these provisional measures to prevent a further increase of its human rights violations. In fact, all states now have a legal obligation to ensure respect for the provisional measures, as well as ensure that they are not complicit in the genocide. Essentially, if the case proceeds as we anticipate, and it is found that Israel committed genocide, all those who were complicit are as guilty as Israel. There are many who are seeking to undermine these orders. For example, they attempt to redefine it so that the killings continue. Some Western governments immediately said, "We hear the judgment, but they didn't order a ceasefire." We can see this only as aiding and abetting. This order for us is a win for international law and for the Genocide Convention, which embodies the solemn pledge to prevent the crime of genocide and hold those responsible to account. It is truly tragic that this convention, which was drafted following the Holocaust against Jewish people in Europe, that it is the very people who then moved to Palestine who are offending this convention. It's tragic. Despite its attempts to block the ICJ from making this order, and in its failed attempt to spin the judgment itself as a victory for them, Israel stands facing the international community and peoples of the world, having failed to deflect attention from its crimes or justify its unfolding genocide. It is now naked to the world for the first time. For the first time in 75 years, Israel is being held accountable by an institution and by the global community. We have now, as South Africa, broken a dangerous culture of impunity that has characterized the illegal occupation of Palestine, the oppression of apartheid in Palestine, and its now unfolding genocide. For the first time, we have opened up for the world to see. We, South Africa. So before I totally break the podium, allow me to stop and thank you once more for the opportunity to address you today in this wonderful, blessed mosque. I trust that you will all continue to be guided by Islamic values that place a premium of justice, fairness, and solidarity with the oppressed. I thank you as the South African Muslim Ummah for not forgetting that although we have won our freedom from the oppression of apartheid, it is our duty to seek that freedom for all humanity, for all who are oppressed. This is our duty and we must carry it out. So I don't take the work, the campaign, the protests, I don't take them lightly. What they mean to me is an appreciation of something absolutely wonderful. We know, through you, that we, as the people of South Africa, while we waged a mighty struggle against apartheid. Our leaders went from country to country across the world and asked for support. And the international community joined in developing a concept some of us forget, called international solidarity. That is all that is making us stand up today. That being free, enjoying human rights, having a constitution, having sovereign right to your land, does not mean you enjoy it purely for yourself. Having been joined in international solidarity, your task today is to join the world in fighting for the people of Palestine until they are free. This is what we must do. I see today that one of my colleague ministers has sent me a recent statement that Israel has called us the legal arm of Hamas. The government of South Africa is the legal arm of Hamas. You know that they've been saying that I take my orders from Iran and that I'm an ISIS supporter. I don't even know what ISIS stands for. But this is some of the fake news and insults that will circulate. They even go to my family and my husband, my children, and, But it's fine. We will strive on. As long as the people of Palestine know we as South Africa are with them, we will strive on. We won't tire. And what I hope we can try and do together, we have sent some aid from our department and government. We have another second package that is sitting somewhere near the Rafah border, which we would like to get across. But now, the lies have grown even bigger. They're now accusing UN workers of having played a role in the October 7 attack by Hamas. And so they have stopped funding to the UN agency that was supporting people who need aid. So I've called on my colleagues of the South, East Asia, Latin America, progressive African countries. Let's put our heads together and let's fund that agency and let's make sure that aid gets there. So let us not idly sit by and watch events. It's not our culture. Let us be active. Let us try and make a difference. Let's have petition after petition after petition. I've been talking to some of our sisters and brothers, and I say there are 5 or so countries that are providing arms to Israel, that provide the real dedicated support. Let's have 10 people every day outside their embassy. Stop the genocide. That's all. Every day. And because we are so connected, let us talk to our brothers and sisters throughout the world, and all of us do that. It will make a mark, because the people of Palestine must not be forgotten. I thank you for all you have done. Assalamu alaikum.
Takbir. Allahu Akbar walillahi alhamd. Thank you, Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor, for a very soul-stirring presentation indeed. The Minister has made many great points, but what stands out for me personally is that she said women must have a voice. So much for many parts of our country where women are not even allowed inside the masjid. so un-Islamic. So I ask of all our young ladies, here you have an icon to follow. Come forward and follow in the footsteps of this great minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, taking a stance, a fearless stance against all forms of injustice and oppression. And this is the kind of leadership that we need. Leadership on every level, whether it is nationally, locally, globally, on ulama level, every level, we need this kind of fearless leadership. We have the guts to look a tyrant in the face and say, you are wrong. Dr. Naledi Pandor, shukran for a beautiful soul-stirring presentation. We have asked already in the week for people to forward their questions. We have received numerous questions, but I have made a mark of 3 particular questions. If you maybe can address each question of these 3 in about 2 to 3 minutes, because of the brevity of time, I will read it and then I hand the paper to the Honorable Minister. Question number 1 by a Mr. or Mrs. Ali. Respected Minister, the South African government position currently is a 2-state solution to this present crisis. After the latest genocide and the statements by Israel's Netanyahu, do you think this is still possible, and is it a recipe for a Bantustan in the making? That is question number 1. Question number 2, not sure if you are aware, but South African Muslims are currently being victimized and denied entry into Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, of which my own sister and brother-in-law were part of that victims. What is the government going to do about it? And are you considering any retaliatory measures? And the final question, number 3, Israel is obviously defying the ICJ verdict in terms of compliance. Would the government consider another court action against Israel at the International Criminal Court to seek a warrant of arrest for Netanyahu?
With respect to the first question about a 2-state solution, it is the position of the government of South Africa that this can be the only resolution to this situation. You will remember Pik Botha. He said there'll never be a black president. We had Nelson Mandela first. You'll remember. We know that situations of conflict will end by negotiation. So Netanyahu may sound like Pik Botha, but in the end, someone from Israel will be around a table of negotiation for a state for Palestine. And to have a state, the issue of settlements has to be addressed, because you can't have a state with separate bits of land. So clearly, the settlements and their current positioning is an important part of the negotiations deliberations. So yes, we do believe that there must be a 2-state solution and that it cannot be based on non-contiguous pieces of land. That's not a state. That's a Bantustan. That's not what we support. Then, I was not aware of the exclusion of South African Muslims, but I'm not surprised. When you take on a cause, you must expect that there will be retribution. So what do? You strengthen your power of protest. We need to find ways of fighting back. We need to speak to Muslims all over the world, especially Muslims in the Middle East, countries that still have relations with Israel. We need to compel, we need to persuade, we need to act, we need to speak. And I don't think that things should be left only to government. I think we must be activists. We must be activists. There are human rights organizations in Palestine. There are a number of activists. We can work together with them. We should be able to mount action that will show Israel that they cannot close down our mosque. So on retaliatory measures, well, they've already harmed themselves. They are not importing our grapes, the best grapes in the world. They've stopped their airline from coming to South Africa. Well, it used to have very few passengers. So there are retaliatory measures. But what we need to look to are our biggest trading partners and make sure that they continue to trade with us. And we also need to speak to countries with which we do not yet have large trade volumes, such as countries in East Asia. We've got to begin trading much more with Indonesia. We've got to do much more with Philippines. We've already started with Malaysia. So we've got to broaden the map of our economic engagement. Because if we rely on our traditional partners, we know that they don't support the ideology and the political positions that we have taken. On defying the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, and indeed the UN, we were aware that Israel would be defiant because they have been. They don't care about what anyone says. But today, the ICJ case is going to continue up to the point of deciding the issue of genocide. What we wanted to do is the issue must be in the court. The court has to investigate thoroughly. All that evidence, all those atrocities will be available to all of us and the global community. And this is an important victory. When you are in a mighty battle, you look for victory after victory after victory. Some may be small, others might be big, but don't undermine any step. South Africa has done a huge thing with this case, and you need to keep saying so. Don't say Israel didn't do this, Israel that. We want the people of Palestine to be free. Say to the South African government, continue, get other countries to support you, and you support us. My only fear about you, the people of South Africa, is that you seem to be heading toward a weak government through the next election. And I can tell you, if you have a government that can't make its own decisions, the things we hold to our heart will be the first to be overturned. So watch out. Ensure there's a government that is able to take decisions and execute them. This is our duty.